Welcome to the Blueprint. In September and October, I had one of the worst dark night of the souls that I have had in this lifetime. It was a big culmination of a lot of different things. Almost 2.5 years ago, I started up two very purpose-driven, also named purpose, businesses that are focused on earth consciousness through the lens of gathering. So sustainable event strategy, sustainable hospitality. And I also have a climate technology that measures group travel emissions called Purpose Net Zero. My other company is called Purpose Sustainability Strategy. And this is not a commercial for those, but what it is I was fortunate to get the role of supporting the Democratic National Convention with their event sustainability strategy. And following that, in September and October, business completely just evaporated. Was not seeing any steady business or income. And frankly, it was also in tandem with what were really some of the worst climate disasters in recent recorded history. And knowing, part of my role with my company is I teach event professionals and people in general about the climate crisis and about the importance of action. So in 2023, we saw $28 billion plus climate disasters in the United States alone, whereas in the 80s, we would see up to only 3 annually. So holding the tension, both of intending to do work to support the earth and support raising of earth consciousness, and at the same time making no money, and being a proud single mom. I have been in the process of divorce for 2.5 years, and it has just now finalized. And frankly, that was not a big part of the dark night of the soul. I'm actually really grateful for my ex-partner and my co-parent for having a beautiful heart, and also building a friendship and recognizing that sometimes relationships in one capacity end, and that they can take totally different forms, and they don't have to be, they can transform in ways that are beautiful and beneficial for all. So, but holding this tension between my intentions and the reality, which I believe, so much of what is happening right now is the old paradigm really ceasing to exist, and the new earth being built, and the energy of the new earth being built before us. Now, the tension and holding the tension of this is that we cannot see this currently. We can feel it. We can know that there's something afoot. We can know that there's something there. But also, what I recognized with this incredibly hard time was, the energies of a lot of things in my life were changing, of friendships, of really dear friendships that I held as very important, and those shifting and not being kind of on the same frequency as some people, even with best intentions, and understanding too that I was at fault in some of these scenarios. I definitely didn't love the way that I had managed myself in certain gatherings and certain different relationships with people, acting out old patterns that really I wasn't proud of, patterns of not being enough, trying to be noticed, trying to be worthy. And it's like weird because you're watching yourself do these things and witnessing it, and then, after the fact, recognizing, man, I don't like the way that I showed up to that. So even with apology, even with, acknowledgement of that, that still doesn't mean that the energy is a match. So what I realized is that growth ceilings and growth edges, when we're going through these hard times, and when we're realizing all these things that are not in service to us, and realizing the myriad ways in which we are not showing up in the ways that we want to or we wish to, I really went into my grief. I was practicing what I preach. I always say we must feel to heal. And ultimately, I went into that grief, but I kind of laid down in it. I kind of surrendered to it. And I didn't keep really conscious control of my own mind and my own thoughts relative to that experience. And so what I experienced was almost like the football version of a pile-on of energies. It's almost like being at this vulnerable state where you are in the grief and you're in sort of this lower frequency. You are susceptible to thoughts, energies, the unseen world in ways that I don't think that we really talk about or are aware of. But only in kind of retrospect did I realize I started getting messages from, the spirit realm, from all different aspects of experience about remembering who I was and remembering, as we say in the blueprint, your thoughts are not you. You are not defined by what you think. These energies can take on a lot of different forms and have a lot of different motives. And obviously, in the psychology and psychiatry community, you won't hear people talking about, bypassing responsibility for our thoughts and actions onto an unseen energy or an energy outside of us. But I can say this was my experience. And once I was able to kind of reframe around the knowing of who I am, the recognition and remembrance of my soul, my capabilities, what I'm here to do, was when I was able to grab the reins and get back on track. The other thing that I think is really important to remember is that when we are growing, when we are evolving, when we are ascending into new frequencies, into new experiences of life, when we are surrendering, we have to get rid of these lower vibrational experiences, these lower versions of ourselves, these old paradigm, aspects of us that really can't survive as we head into higher states of consciousness, higher ways of being. They have to go. They have to be seen. They have to be heard. They have to be acknowledged. But the trick is that I learned is that it's not about giving the reins to your sovereignty, your heart, your mind over to them. It is witnessing them with presence, with calm observation. It's being in the moment with them without letting them take you where they want to go. And so I want to also talk about, so the unity timeline is kind of the term that I have been hearing really post the US election. I've been hearing that this is an acceleration of the unity timeline. And when I say I've been hearing, I spend time in observation, in self-observation, in, intuitive observation, psychic observation, whatever you want to call it. But that is the term. And it's connected to Pluto heading into Aquarius, which is an astrological aspect. I've been talking about this in my private circles, in my retreats, in my events, in my friendships, in my Zoom calls for almost this entire year and beyond. But essentially, Pluto is the planet of death and transformation. And Aquarius is the sign of the collective good. So, in the most succinct way, Pluto going into Aquarius, which happens tomorrow, November 19th. I'm recording this on the eve. It will be there for the next 20 years. So, it is the death and transformation to all that which is not in service to the highest good of all, to the collective good. And so what does this mean for us? The last time that Pluto was in Aquarius was the French Revolution, the American Revolution, and the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. It is a wild energy of renaissance, of revolution, of new beginnings, of getting rid of the things that are not truly in service to good and rebuilding a new way of being. This is a very exciting time. And what I want to talk about too is the election itself. Although I'm not, looking to get people triggered. I read that 59% of Americans did not vote. 20% voted for Kamala, 21% for Trump. So 59%, almost 60% of Americans didn't want either. Another 20% voted for the person that didn't win. And so that means that 79% are not in favor of what is about to happen when Trump goes into office. So 79% is the vast majority of the collective. So when we're talking about what is in service to the collective good and this revolution taking part at this very moment, I believe this will accelerate a unification timeline. So essentially a timeline in which we come together to protect Mother Earth, to protect each other, to protect those who are of the minority, who are on the edges, who are maybe their voices aren't as loud as the larger aspects of the group, but a unification around our common good. So what is our common good? Our planet, our Mother Earth, where we all live, our humanity, our hearts, love, oneness. So all these things are swirling around, and frankly, this is a very exciting time to be alive. So I kind of see a lot of different things going on. I'm really into degrowth as a concept. It's essentially an intentional movement away from growthism. And so when I realized that the sheer nature of capitalism, which is essentially exponential growth year over year, at such a clip that it automatically negates all environmental progress just by the sheer nature of growthism. So when I realized that, and that really it didn't seem like there was a plan away from this exponential growthism that seemed apparent at this moment, it just logically to me made sense that that is not going to work for us. And also combined with the fact that, you know, wealth inequity is so large that the majority, over 90% of people worldwide, you know, cannot afford to ever retire beyond very close to the end of life. So really the system itself isn't actually working for the majority of people in the way that it was originally intended. So the things that we are dealing with when we look at these issues is really a difference in dominant worldviews. So some examples, and we've talked about this previously, but Western worldviews, which are very attached to capitalism, are highly hierarchical. They're compartmentalized, they're linear, and they don't have a strong social purpose that really unites the group. They're reductionists and often have rigid stereotypes about gender norms or various different subcategories of people. And subcategory is not meant to be sub anything. It just, you know, I just want to be clear about that. It's also about fear-based thoughts and behaviors, focusing on self, focusing on material, very human-centric, science-based, and it's really about the head over heart. Meanwhile, indigenous worldviews believe that all life has value. They are non-hierarchical. They are about socially purposeful lifestyles. Everyone within the tribe has a role. There's a deep trust in the universe, a collective focus, and belief systems are connected to life, oneness, animism, ritual, respect for earth and natural cycles, and about the heart over the head. So there's this concept of cultural hegemony, which was postured by Anthony Gramsci back many hundreds of years ago in Italy. And he was an Italian philosopher who was actually jailed by the concept. But cultural hegemony is essentially that there is an elite group of people that have an agenda that they are looking to push out into the community, into the culture. And they do this by way of manipulation of media, schools, and other types of cultural institutions. So he actually was jailed for that, and he died in jail because of this concept. But the interconnectivity within this world of capitalism that we live in is interesting to think about. So, we've talked about everything being energy, and I want to talk a little bit about the quantum field. So you may have heard of quantum physics, quantum theory. Quantum field is essentially that there's a lot of different aspects to it. So there's hive consciousness, which postures that our collective thoughts, the prevailing collective thoughts create our reality. So if there's a pervasive fear of death, like Tyson Yunkaporta postures, then that, belief that we only have a linear experience of life and we live once is being projected onto the earth as a linear experience of death by the earth. That's one example. But so I think that the quantum field also, I see a lot of interconnection here with hierarchy and this concept of intellectual wisdom as perceived as something to be achieved and hierarchical, due to the concept of intellect as something to be gained, sought, garnered, rather than embodied. And do not get me wrong, all of those folks that have worked hard, extremely hard for their intellect and knowledge. And I take classes and courses all the time. I'm obsessed with learning. But I wanted to raise the question about the quantum field being a state of vibration, an energetic space in which all humans can access. It's accessible to all. So what if all knowledge is static within this quantum field at an achievable and attainable frequency? But it's able to be accessed when we are at a vibration that's ascended from the separation induced by this version of our reality. So what if we're able to ascend past our fear, our perceived limitations, and our perceived separation from ourselves, from Earth, and that we are able to access this field of divine oneness? And it's really what exists within us. But the quantum field is the field of all possibilities. So what if all you need to do to access infinite wisdom is surrender to what is meant to flow through you? Now, when we say what can flow through you, only things can flow through you if you are not blocked, if you don't stop them, if there isn't resistance to that flow. So if you don't believe in the possibilities of the universe working through you in divine ways, in miraculous ways, then clearly it cannot, because your own perceived limitation is there to block it before it begins. So what if everything you seek outside of yourself resides right within you, ready to burst forth from your heart space? So I just wanted to bring this idea up because I think we are at a place in which we can cultivate a field and frequency of presence. This presence that we cultivate is where we can observe ourselves. And it's not only observation. We can observe, of course, our energy, thoughts, emotions, but we can also bring things to life within the present moment. So we can bring the emotions and the feelings and the vision and the intention of the things that we wish to bring into creation and we wish to see happen. We can bring these energies, these emotions, this way of being into our present moment, and we can live and practice living in that reality, even if it is simply through feeling the love in our heart that we would feel in this future version of ourselves, or it's envisioning us walking around our dream landscape, our most optimal future. We are all variations of source consciousness experiencing itself. What does that mean? The life force energy that lights up my body, that lights up your body, is a little version of our bigger soul's existence, which was created at the time of source energy. So call it the Big Bang, call it whatever you want to call it. When all life first existed, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So we all are little tiny variations of consciousness experiencing itself, which is why polarity exists. It's why opposites exist. It's why, but it's also why it's such a mechanism of control for those that understand it. When we believe we are separate, it is fuel for our ego to find ways in which we are better than someone else. And when we're in this state of mind, we are more easily controlled by external narratives. We are trying to find ways in which we can create value so that we are more valuable and that our life is meaningful and that we will get to stay within the group, within the tribe, within the what have you. But polarity, this is why we call duality something of such importance. Duality is when you can witness both sides of the polarity and hold the tension in the middle. I have an aversion to hierarchy that is so deep that I'm nearly stifled from doing the blueprint and posting, photos on Instagram and posting videos anywhere, basically wanting to avoid at all cost any assertion that I'm somehow wiser or more enlightened than somebody else. But I have this calling from the depths of my soul to be a teacher, to be proponent of the unseen world, of concepts in which have been taboo and frankly have gotten people executed many times over. There's this term I heard in a class recently: approach animosity with curiosity. How can we be curious about people that are different than us? How can we bridge the gap between belief systems? As I believe, just like the statistics show, we have so much more in common with each other than we know. So how can we begin to have conversations and witness each other, witness the humanity in each other with curiosity? Because I deeply believe that when we see horrifying things that are happening around the globe, it is not that I am saying that we should be curious and kind to those people that are, frankly, committing horrifying war crimes and crimes against humanity. But I can guarantee that when you trace the timeline of those people's back far enough, you will find an area and an aspect of time in which they were told that they were not worthy, they were not good enough, they were not human. They were dehumanized, they were killed, they were murdered. It's always some deep pain in a place in which someone lost all track of love and all track of divine oneness within their hearts, in which things go astray. So the cycle of death and war and horrifying crimes, if it's an eye for an eye, is an ever continuing cycle. It never ends. We have to come back to seeing what we would consider our enemies with empathy for the pain that they have experienced in order to end these perpetual cycles of death and tragedy and, frankly, horrifying history that we are currently experiencing. I'm really into this idea that we have three dimensions of our experience. We have the physical dimension, the emotional dimension, and the spiritual dimension. I heard this from one of my teachers, Ra, who has this amazing course called Project Tipping Point by Rebiz. The thing is, when we create things, ideally they touch on all three of these dimensions: the physical, the emotional, the spiritual. Right now, much of our systems are created in strictly the physical dimension, meaning they weren't designed for the well-being of emotional dimension. They were definitely not designed for the spiritual dimension. So how can we create something new that has more magnetism and draw than the existing systems in which we exist in? And I believe it's the creation of systems and experiences which are rooted in all three dimensions: physical, emotional, and spiritual. From the moment we're born, we're in a reciprocal relationship with life. Again, Ra said recently, we take our first breath in and then we must give our next breath back out. We survive in reciprocity with the earth. Everything is reciprocal. It's a give take. It's now time to pick a path. And the path is through our own thoughts and visions, through our heart, through our beliefs. Notice what you consume and whether that helps you observe your thoughts or it solidifies them. Try to diversify your viewpoint. So as we seek to envision a new future, one that is more aligned with our souls and Mother Earth's rhythms and what we wish for our children and future generations, assess the things that you intake in terms of what you watch and what you follow on social media, the thoughts and the energies and the words in which you consume, and assess whether these thoughts and energies and words are solidifying beliefs that you already have or creating new beliefs that maybe don't align with what you wish to see in the world. And also, do an analysis of any type of judgment of others for their beliefs. Judgment is usually reflective of something within that is either not being seen or you are witnessing something that someone else is doing that you deeply wish you were doing too, or that you had too. So the thing is, we make a lot of judgments based on our own beliefs about reality. And as my good friend Tim Forsman says, a former NASA scientist with earthparty.org, we only have any inkling on about 5% of the nature of reality in terms of the science and research and multitude of human wisdom that's been accumulated over humanity's lived experience and recent documentation as such. So if we only can say with certainty about 5% of reality being what it is, imagine what exists in that 95% that we aren't giving space or opportunity for because of our own perceived limitation and our egoic belief and desire to be all-knowing. So I'll leave that there. And I want to say that the blueprint will have season 2, which will be much more interview style with various types of healers and thinkers and unique individuals. So stay tuned. Coming in 2025, we'll have a lot more content for you, including the creation of the Blueprint community, which intends to bring people together to think, dream, co-create, and bring into existence a better reality for us all. I look forward to being with you soon, and I wish everyone a very happy holiday season.